Okay, so now that we have the SSH set up for GitHub, let's go ahead and create a GitHub repository, initialize it with a Git flow that we'll be talking about in a bit, and push the code to GitHub. So let's go to the GitHub. I'm already logged in. Let's create a new project. I'm going to call it DevOps. Go ahead and hit create repository. Once you have created the repository, there's a setup that we would need to do because we are adding this the first time. So there's two options. One is you have the HTTPS options and one you have the SSH options. So if you already have a project that you want to push to Git, you could use these instructions. If we are starting out fresh like we are going to use the instructions that's defined in here. So the list of instructions that's been provided here is we're going to create a README file. We're going to init the file, init with a Git repository, do an add, do the commit, and add a remote origin, which would be the GitHub, and then push the code to the master. So let's get started and do the following steps. I'm going to do one of it at a time, and I should have a terminal open up here. Let me clear the console, make sure I'm in the correct place. And before we do that, there's a couple of tweaks or cheats that I can provide, which is to be able to see which branch you are on once you start using Git. So I've already done this in previous projects. I'm not gonna copy it over again and write it again, but you can go to the bash profile, and once you're past your Maven settings, we're going to copy something that I already have this open up in Atom. And what this would do is basically do some prompting, or would tell you which particular Git branch you're on and add some highlighting to it, right? So I copied this. This should be available in the reference section once you start the course. So let's go ahead and save this. And I'm going to do reload it. And that actually took care of the reload, right? So it's saying I'm at dev and I'm at my root directory. So let's go into the DevOps folder and saying I'm at the DevOps folder, right? And let's list everything out here. Let's create a directory called GitHub, and let's go into the GitHub directory and look at what's there. There's nothing should be there. Create a folder called DevOps, which would be the name of our project. So once you're in here, you can go into DevOps and we'll follow the instructions that's been listed on the website. So echo, go back in here, and I'm going to do add, or I should first init the repository, right? So initialize the Git repository. I can add readme, and that's been added. And I can do a commit, initial commit, right? And now you notice that once we have committed it, because of the tweak that we added on my bash profile, I can say that I'm on the master branch, right? So let's go ahead and grab the remote origin and make sure that you're using the SSH settings. So that's the remote origin. And since this is the first time, I'm going to push to master. I'm gonna do push origin master. right? And since this is the first time we are communicating from this PC to GitHub, it's asking if we can add this to a known host file. And I say yes, and it should push the code to GitHub. So if I go in here and I take a look at the DevOps project, I should see my initial commit, the last commit a minute ago. So a couple of things before we move forward. We want to initialize it with git flow. So I should have Atlassian out here and it should be running. I'm going to say new add existing local repository, and it should be that's the root of my new project, right? I'm gonna click on that and double click on my repository. Now here you notice that I'm already on branch master, right? So it shows that this was the last commit that I actually committed to the master. Now I want to initialize it with git flow, so I can go in here and instead of using this one, I'm going to use the git flow and initialize the repository. And it's basically going to create certain branches that will help you facilitate the different stages of development, right? Whether you're on a production branch, whether you're on a development branch, or whether you're on a feature branch or a release branch, right? So these are some of the defaults that Gitflow recommends. You can change it, but I recommend that you keep it the same so that you are consistent with what is being done in the industry. So once you go ahead and do this, it's going to create another branch called develop and switch you over to the develop branch. So let's make sure that we push the new branch. So I'm going to select both of them, and I'm saying that I'm going to push these branches to GitHub. So if now I go to GitHub, I should see two branches, right? The master and the develop. Now notice my default branch is still master, so I want to make a change before I corrupt my master, or what I should say, the production branch. I can go into settings, click on branches, make sure my default branch is develop, and I hit update. So now that becomes your default branch. You also want to make sure that your master is protected, right? So that no one actually deletes your master branch other than an administrator. And you want to make sure that any code that's being pushed to master goes through a pull request. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And now you should have your repository set up for active development.